I think I was in denial because it's just hit me that Daniel Ricciardo is not going to be on the Formula One grid in 2023. The Australian who made his debut in 2011 and became one of the most sought-after names in the sport after some exceptional years at Red Bull and Renault became a fan favourite as well. Jump forward to now, and after a rollercoaster of a summer break, it's been announced that McLaren will be parting ways with their most recent race winner and replacing him with Oscar Piastri for the 2023 campaign. Even with 8 wins behind him, it's clear that the 2022 season has dropped his stock to an all-time low, and I think this could be the end for Daniel Ricciardo. To explain, let's take a look at the 5 teams that still have an available seat for 2023: Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Haas, AlphaTauri, and Williams, and look at why I don't think Daniel Ricciardo fits into any of those teams. Starting with Alpine, the team that Daniel Ricciardo left just a couple of seasons ago for McLaren, thinking that McLaren were closer to being able to offering him chances at winning Grand Prix. And to be fair, which kind of came true, he did manage to get 1 victory at McLaren, whereas he didn't get any at Renault. But looking at the championships this season, Alpine have the upper hand, although this is mainly because Daniel Ricciardo has not hit the level of the other 3 drivers in that battle for 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. With the news that Alonso is going to be moving to Aston Martin, the first rumour that surfaced from that was that Daniel Ricciardo was most likely to make a return to Alpine in 2023, but I personally don't think this happens anymore. Pierre Gasly, after signing a contract with AlphaTauri, still seems to have a release clause that would allow him to make a move to the French team, and for me, this makes much more sense than Daniel Ricciardo, especially as Red Bull seem to be happy for Pierre Gasly to move on as long as their fee is met. For Alpine, they get a driver with a great amount of Formula One experience, and he has shown that he can be one of the best midfield drivers on the grid as long as the car suits him. Alright, he may not get on incredibly well with Esteban Ocon, but the team would be able to handle the occasional battle on and off track if they're still finishing in 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. And for Pierre Gasly, it's a great move as well. Let's face it, the return to Red Bull is looking less and less likely as the seasons progress, and at Alpine, he has a chance at more consistent success. It would be a great move for him, and Pierre has actually said that he's working on a contract himself. So with the Alpine door closed for Daniel Ricciardo, the next best team on the grid is Alfa Romeo, who are still yet to decide on the fate of their Chinese rookie, Zhou Guanyu. Although we recently did have an announcement that completely changes the landscape of that Alfa Romeo team over the 2023 season. That being that Alfa Romeo and Sauber will be parting company at the end of the 2023 campaign. With the Alfa Romeo name removed, Sauber will be looking for a new title sponsor, and the people looking most likely to take over are Audi. This is because Audi will be joining Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Renault as an engine manufacturer in the 2026 season, so having the team that they can build towards 2026 where they can become a full works team makes sense. We know when a new team comes in and it has money, they like to make a marquee signing. Just look at Vettel and Aston Martin, for example. With 8 race wins in Formula One, Daniel Ricciardo would make a very nice signing for an Audi team, but that would be in 2024 and therefore leaves Daniel Ricciardo still without a seat for next season. And I personally feel it might be quite turbulent in that Alfa Romeo setup over the course of the 2023 season, and they're getting slower and slower and slower as the season has progressed. Which is why I think Zhou looks set to stay next year for Alfa Romeo, and then there's also the Theo Pourchaire question mark looming, as the Sauber Jr. has said that he wants to leave Formula 2 for the 2023 season. Which then moves us down the constructors' order again to Haas Formula 1, who have a seat available as they are yet to renew Mick Schumacher for the 2023 season. And as the season has progressed, it looks less and less likely that Haas will renew their contract with Mick, as his talks during the summer were cancelled and more rumours are popping up around other drivers. And one of those rumours has been Daniel Ricciardo partnering Kevin Magnussen in a Haas car that's looked pretty decent at times over the course of this season and would definitely be an interesting prospect moving into next year. Haas seem to have rebuilt themselves, especially by using that 2021 campaign as a building year. It definitely worked in their favour. Last year was absolutely awful for everyone involved, but this season they've taken real steps forward, and I think the next step for me in this rebuild would be to find some more consistency, which we know if Daniel Ricciardo is given a car that suits his style, he can definitely bring. Let's not forget that before McLaren, he was known for getting absolutely the best out of the Red Bull and Renault car that he was given every single weekend. On top of that, he would bring an incredible amount of support to the team as his fan base is massive, particularly in the States, which would surely only grow if he was moving to an American team. So he looks to tick all the boxes for the Haas team, but the reason I don't think Daniel Ricciardo has a shot at that Haas seat is that the finances of the team are nowhere near the point where they can take on an elite driver contract like Daniel Ricciardo would want. He might take a minor pay cut because of the payout from McLaren, but I still think he'd want the backing of a top-level driver from whatever team he goes to. As the smallest and youngest team on the grid, Haas can't take on that financial burden, which is why they're more heavily linked to drivers like Nico Hülkenberg, who still brings experience without the heavy cost. So if Haas are not an option, the next free seat is at AlphaTauri. In fact, AlphaTauri in a position where both seats could be vacant for the 2023 season if Pierre Gasly moves to Alpine and Yuki Tsunoda is still yet to sign a contract. But I feel like if Gasly does move on, Yuki Tsunoda will certainly stay on and probably become the team number 1 in that AlphaTauri setup, even with his turbulent start to his Formula 1 career. I feel like if Daniel Ricciardo were to inquire about that second AlphaTauri seat, he'd hit a huge Red Bull-shaped wall in Helmut Marko. We all know how cutthroat Helmut can be when it comes to Red Bull drivers, and he certainly doesn't pull any punches if you haven't been performing, which Daniel Ricciardo hasn't been over the past 2 seasons. Looking at the Red Bull Juniors in Formula 2 this season, there are multiple options moving forward for AlphaTauri, although none of them have really hit the ground running for me. Outside of the Red Bull Juniors, they've also looked at options like De Vries and Herta, which means that even though the cohort of Red Bull Juniors in Formula 2 right now isn't amazing, the team clearly have their sights set on some fantastic young drivers that Red Bull could look to use long-term as a replacement for Sergio Perez, which doesn't really happen with an aging Daniel Ricciardo. For me, so far, 4 out of the 5 teams don't really have the capacity or the need for a driver like Daniel Ricciardo in 2023, which leaves just one option remaining at Williams, replacing Nicholas Latifi alongside Alex Albon. And unfortunately for Daniel Ricciardo fans, I think this is the least likely move of them all. If Daniel Ricciardo moves to the back of the grid, it doesn't really work for driver or for the team. Daniel Ricciardo would not want to move backwards to statistically the worst team on the grid after moving teams already 3 times chasing wins in the last 5 years. He's said himself that he's still believes with the right package, he can drive and win races and fight for championships. This is not a driver winding down his career like Kimi or Seb over the last couple of seasons. But Williams simply can't offer that as a team still in transition. As much as Daniel Ricciardo would be a great driver to have with the development of the team and help make the car much faster, I think that Williams are looking more at the future in terms of stability. What they really want is another driver like Alex Albon that can be in the team for a long time without being too demanding. And let's face it, Daniel Ricciardo would get very frustrated racing by himself at the back of the pack every other weekend if we're at a track that doesn't suit the package. And that's 5 out of 5 teams that I don't think have space for Daniel Ricciardo in 2023. The rumor is that he might take a reserve/testing role at Mercedes next year and maybe come up with something for 2024. But it's a shame to see as he is one of the best characters we've had on the Formula 1 grid, but his stock has just dropped so low and his price is still so high that I can't see anyone making a space for it. But let me know in the comments down below, do you think Daniel Ricciardo will be able to find himself a seat in 2023 and where do you think he might be? Whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you next time.
Yeah! He won! Bloody did it! Yes! Yeah, boy!